Michael unlocked the front door with practiced ease, stepping into the dimly lit hallway of his home. The aroma of lavender lingered in the air, a scent Sophia adored. It was quiet, too quiet. Usually, their children, Emma and Liam, filled the house with laughter and chaos. Tonight, only the distant hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock accompanied his arrival. In his hands were her favorite sunflowers and a bottle of wine. He had come home early, determined to rekindle the warmth that seemed to have faded between them. The past months had been hard. Long hours at work, distant glances at home, and a subtle chill in the space they once shared with ease. Placing the flowers on the counter, he noticed something odd. Sophia's phone. Abandoned near the coffee machine. She was never careless with her phone. Its screen lit up as he set down the wine, revealing a text message that turned his world upside down. The word struck Michael like a blow to the chest. Ryan. The name wasn't unfamiliar. Sophia had mentioned him a handful of times, a colleague from her office, always spoken about in passing. Michael had never paid much attention. Until now. Hands trembling, he unlocked the phone. She hadn't changed her passcode. He scrolled through their conversation, each message more damning than the last. Flirtatious texts. Explicit details of nights spent together. Pictures he couldn't bring himself to look at fully. His heart pounded, a mix of anger, disbelief, and something darker. He placed the phone back as he found it, his breath coming in shallow gasps. He needed time to think, to process. Confrontation wasn't an option, at least not yet. He needed answers. The next morning, Michael watched Sophia move about the kitchen, the picture of casual elegance. Her long dark hair was tied in a loose bun, her lips curved in a serene smile as she hummed softly. "Morning, love," she said, setting a plate of toast in front of him. "Morning," he murmured, forcing his voice to remain steady. She poured herself a coffee and joined him at the table, asking about his plans for the day. Michael barely heard her. His mind was consumed by the memory of her messages to Ryan. She spoke as if nothing was wrong, as if their lives were still as whole as they once were. When she kissed him goodbye before leaving for work, Michael clenched his fists, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. He watched her drive away, determined to uncover the truth. That evening, while Sophia took Emma and Liam to their grandparents', Michael made his move. He installed hidden cameras in the living room, bedroom, and kitchen. He set up a GPS tracker on her car and cloned her phone, ensuring he would have access to all her messages, calls, and social media. For days, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Sophia went about her routines, coming home at predictable times, playing with the kids, and chatting with Michael at dinner. But the texts on her cloned phone painted a different picture. Ryan's messages were frequent, filled with longing and affection. Their exchanges hinted at stolen moments during lunch breaks and secret rendezvous after work. Michael's heart sank with each word, but he remained silent, determined to gather irrefutable evidence. On the fifth night, Sophia came home later than usual. She looked flushed but happy, claiming she had stayed late at the office to finalize a project. Michael didn't respond, merely nodding as he studied her carefully. That night, as she slept soundly beside him, Michael reviewed the footage from the hidden cameras. His suspicions were confirmed. Sophia hadn't been alone when she returned home earlier that week. Ryan had been with her. The video showed them entering the house, whispering and laughing like teenagers. They kissed passionately in the living room before retreating upstairs. Michael couldn't bring himself to watch the rest.
While Michael grappled with the betrayal, a figure from his past re-entered his life. Sarah, his former fiancée, reached out unexpectedly. They had parted ways amicably years before Michael met Sophia, but Sarah had remained a lingering "what if" in the back of his mind. "Michael, I know it's been a while," Sarah's voice crackled over the phone, But I heard about your company's new project. I thought maybe we could collaborate. Her timing was uncanny. Michael agreed to meet her, needing a distraction from the turmoil at home. Their reunion was bittersweet. Sarah was just as he remembered, sharp-witted, compassionate, and beautiful. Over coffee, they discussed business, but their conversation soon veered into personal territory. You see, tense, Sarah noted, her eyes studying him closely. Michael hesitated, but eventually opened up. He didn't mention names or specifics, but he spoke of betrayal and the cracks in his marriage. Sarah listened, her expression unreadable. "Don't let her destroy you, Michael," she said softly. Her words lingered with him long after their meeting. The night Michael had been dreading finally came. Sophia returned home late again, her excuse flimsy. This time, Michael was ready. He stood in the living room, the hidden camera's footage playing on the TV behind him. Sophia froze in the doorway, her face draining of color as she saw the incriminating video. "Oh, Michael, I can explain." It's the wrong figure. "Don't you devers me, David. You are not Peter." Tears filled her eyes as she tried to approach him, but Michael stepped back. "How long, Sophia? How long have you been lying to me, to our children?" "It wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "I was lonely, Michael. You've been so distant." "Distant?" Michael's voice rose. "Do you have any idea what I've been doing for this family, for you?" She sobbed, but Michael felt no sympathy. He handed her an envelope containing divorce papers. "You can leave tonight. I'll explain everything to Emma and Liam when the time is right." Sophia stared at the sterile walls of her new apartment, the echoes of her once perfect life haunting her. The space was cold, a far cry from the warmth of the home she had built with Michael. She had chosen this path, she reminded herself, but as the days passed, the illusion of freedom began to crumble. At first, Ryan had seemed like the escape she needed. He was exciting, full of compliments, and always available to listen when she vented about Michael's long hours and emotional distance. But now, as she sat in the emptiness of their shared apartment, Ryan's charm felt hollow. Arguments began almost immediately. Ryan was possessive, constantly questioning her loyalty. "If you could lie to your husband for years," he sneered one night, "what's stopping you from doing the same to me?" The words cut deep, forcing Sophia to confront her choices. She had traded stability and love for fleeting passion, only to find herself trapped in a cycle of mistrust and resentment. Meanwhile, whispers of her affair spread through their social circles. Friends who had once admired her now avoided her. Even her own parents, initially supportive, began to distance themselves. "We didn't raise you to destroy your family," her mother had said, her voice tinged with disappointment. Sophia tried to reach out to Michael, pleading for forgiveness, but her calls went unanswered. Her children, once the center of her world, were now distant figures she could only see during court-mandated visitations. Her life was unraveling, and, for the first time, Sophia realized she had no one to blame but herself. As Sophia packed her belongings, Michael stared out the window, lost in thought. Sarah's words echoed in his mind. "Don't let her destroy you." Weeks turned into months. Michael threw himself into his work, finding solace in creating something tangible, something that couldn't betray him. Sarah became a steady presence in his life, offering friendship and support. Sophia moved in with Ryan, but their relationship quickly crumbled under the weight of guilt and mistrust. Meanwhile, Michael rebuilt his life, focusing on Emma and Liam. Though the scars of betrayal remained, Michael emerged stronger. He learned to trust himself again, to value the love of those who truly mattered. And as he watched his children play in the yard one sunny afternoon, he realized he had found peace. While Sophia's life spiraled downward, Michael found solace in the steady presence of Sarah. What began as casual business meetings evolved into something deeper. Sarah was patient, never pushing him to talk, but always ready to listen when he did. "What are you doing this?" Michael asked one evening as they shared coffee in her cozy townhouse. Sarah smiled softly. "Because I know what it feels like to be betrayed, and because I care about you, Michael. I always have." Her words stirred something in him. Michael had spent months feeling broken, but Sarah's warmth and kindness began to fill the cracks. She reminded him of the person he had been before the betrayal. Confident, hopeful, and strong. Sarah also played a pivotal role in helping him navigate his new reality. She introduced him to a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma and encouraged him to reconnect with his passions outside of work. Together, they volunteered at a local youth center where Michael found purpose in mentoring teens interested in architecture. Their relationship deepened gradually, built on trust and mutual respect. Michael wasn't ready to call it love. His wounds were still healing, but he knew that Sarah was someone he could see a future with. One evening, as Michael reviewed paperwork in his office, he received an unexpected email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "You need to know the truth about Ryan." Curious but wary, Michael opened the email. Attached were documents, bank statements, hotel receipts, and photos. All pointing to a chilling revelation. Ryan had been targeting Sophia deliberately. Digging deeper, Michael uncovered a trail of deceit. Ryan wasn't just a colleague. He was a manipulative opportunist with a history of pursuing married women. His pattern was clear. He would charm them, alienate them from their families, and then drain them financially. Michael's blood boiled as he read through the evidence. Ryan had taken out loans in Sophia's name, maxed out her credit cards, and even convinced her to invest a significant portion of her savings into a business opportunity that didn't exist. Fueled by anger, Michael hired a private investigator to verify the claims. The investigator confirmed everything and uncovered even more. Ryan was already seeing another woman, likely grooming her as his next victim. Michael decided it was time to act. He contacted Sophia and asked her to meet him at a neutral location under the guise of discussing custody arrangements. Sophia arrived, hopeful but wary. "I want to help you," Michael began, sliding a folder across the table. Sophia opened it, her face paling as she skimmed through the documents. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's Ryan's history," Michael said coldly. "He's using you, Sophia. He's done this to other women, and he'll do it again." Tears welled in her eyes as the reality sank in. I didn't know." "No, you didn't," Michael said, his tone softening. "But now you do. You can either let him ruin you completely, or you can take back control." Sophia nodded, her resolve hardening. With Michael's support, she filed a police report against Ryan, providing the evidence he had uncovered. She also began the process of reclaiming her finances, though it would take years to undo the damage. Sophia's fall from grace was complete, but it became the foundation for her redemption. She sought therapy, reconnected with her children, and worked tirelessly to rebuild her life. The road was long, but she was determined to prove to herself and to them that she could be better. Michael, meanwhile, found happiness with Sarah. Their relationship blossomed, rooted in mutual respect and a shared vision for the future. With Sarah's encouragement, Michael expanded his architectural firm, using his success to give back to the community. Ryan, however, wasn't so lucky. The evidence against him was damning, and he faced criminal charges for fraud and identity theft. His charm couldn't save him this time, and he disappeared from their lives as quickly as he had entered. As Michael stood on the balcony of his new home, watching Emma and Liam play in the yard, Sarah joined him, slipping her hand into his. "It's over," she said. Michael smiled, the weight of the past finally lifting. "Yes, it is, and we're just getting started." Weeks after Sophia's departure, Michael was still grappling with the quietness of the house. The absence of her presence was both a relief and a void. Emma and Liam were his anchors, their laughter the only thing keeping him from sinking into despair. But at night, when the house fell silent, loneliness crept in. It was during one of those quiet evenings that Sarah called. "I was just checking in," she said, her voice warm but cautious. "How are you holding up?" Michael hesitated. He wasn't sure how to answer. "Some days are better than others," he admitted. "The kids keep me going." "They're lucky to have you," Sarah said softly. "But who's keeping you going?" Her question lingered in the air. And for the first time, Michael realized how much he needed someone to lean on. Sarah became that someone. Their phone calls became more frequent, evolving into casual dinners after work. At first, they kept things light, discussing work, shared acquaintances, and their favorite books. But as the weeks passed, their conversations grew deeper. Sarah shared her own story of betrayal, the heartbreak of discovering her ex-husband's infidelity, and the strength it took to rebuild her life. Michael found comfort in her resilience. She wasn't just a friend. She was someone who understood his pain without judgment. One evening, Michael invited Sarah over for dinner with Emma and Liam. He wasn't sure how his children would react. But, to his surprise, they adored her. Sarah had a natural ease with kids, engaging them in games and conversations as if she had known them forever. "Is she your girlfriend?" Liam asked bluntly as Sarah helped clear the table. Michael nearly choked on his drink, but Sarah only laughed. "Just a friend," she said, ruffling Liam's hair. But that night, as Michael watched her laugh with his children, he felt a pang of something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. Over time, Sarah became a regular presence in their lives. She accompanied them on outings to the park, helped Emma with her school projects, and even introduced Liam to her dog Max, which quickly became his new obsession. For Michael, her presence was more than a comfort, it was a reminder that life could be good again. Despite their growing closeness, Michael hesitated to take their relationship further. He was haunted by the fear of being hurt again, of opening himself up, only to have his trust shattered once more. Sarah sensed his hesitation. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, she confronted him. "Michael, I care about you," she said, her voice steady. "But if this is too much, if you're not ready, I need to know." Michael looked at her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. "It's not that I don't want this," he said quietly. "I'm just scared. I've already lost so much." Sarah reached for his hand, her touch warm and grounding. "I'm not Sophia," she said simply, "and I'm not asking you to rush. Just don't shut me out." Her words broke through the walls he had built around himself. For the first time, Michael allowed himself to imagine a future with her, not as a replacement for what he had lost, but as something entirely new. Their first kiss was unplanned. It happened during a late-night walk after dinner. The air was cool, the stars bright above them. Sarah paused to point out a constellation, and when Michael turned to look at her, the moment simply happened. It was gentle, tentative, but it ignited something between them that had been building for weeks. "Sorry," Michael murmured, pulling back. "I didn't mean to—" "Don't apologize," Sarah interrupted, smiling. From that moment, Their relationship shifted. They spent more time together, not just as friends, but as partners. Michael introduced Sarah to his extended family, who welcomed her warmly. And when she introduced him to her parents, they were equally charmed by his quiet strength and devotion to his children. As their relationship deepened, Michael faced an unexpected challenge: his lingering insecurities. One evening, after a long day at work, he noticed Sarah texting someone and felt a twinge of suspicion. "Who was that?" he asked, his tone sharper than he intended. Sarah looked up, surprised. "A friend from college. Why?" Michael hesitated, hating how the past still held him captive. "I'm sorry, I don't want to be blindsided again." Sarah set her phone down and crossed the room to him. "Michael," she said firmly, "if we're going to do this, you have to trust me. I won't hurt you, but I can't build something with you if you're constantly looking over your shoulder." Her honesty hit him like a wake-up call. "You're right," he said softly. "I'll do better." From that moment, Michael made a conscious effort to leave his fears behind. It wasn't easy, but Sarah's patience and understanding helped him every step of the way. Months turned into a year, and Michael and Sarah's relationship flourished. They moved in together, blending their lives seamlessly. Sarah became a second mother to Emma and Liam, who adored her as much as she adored them. On the anniversary of their first kiss, Michael proposed. It wasn't elaborate, just a quiet moment in the park where they often took the kids. But it was perfect. "I never thought I'd have this again," Michael said, as he slid the ring onto her finger. "You deserve it," Sarah replied, tears in her eyes. Their wedding was small but beautiful, attended by family and close friends. As Michael watched Sarah dance with Emma and Liam at the reception, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. In the years that followed, Michael and Sarah built a life filled with love, laughter, and trust. Sophia, having rebuilt her own life, maintained a cordial relationship with Michael for the sake of their children. Ryan, however, faded into obscurity, his manipulative ways finally catching up to him. Michael heard rumors of his financial ruin and couldn't help but feel a sense of poetic justice. As Michael stood on the porch of their home one summer evening, watching Sarah play catch with Emma and Liam, he realized how far he had come. The scars of betrayal would always remain, but they no longer defined him. In Sarah, he had found not just love, but a partner who reminded him that even after the darkest nights, the sun would rise again. Would you like more focus on their wedding, the children's growing bond with Sarah, or how Michael finally overcame his lingering doubts? Michael's relationship with Sarah was everything he hadn't dared to hope for after Sophia's betrayal. Honest, supportive, and filled with warmth. But no matter how much progress they made, the shadows of his past still lingered. At first, they appeared in small ways: an unintentional hesitancy when Sarah smiled at her phone, an instinct to check where she was if she didn't answer his call immediately. Michael hated the part of himself that questioned her loyalty, knowing full well it was born not of her actions, but of the scars Sophia had left behind. One evening, as Sarah prepared dinner, Michael lingered in the doorway, watching her move with ease around the kitchen. She hummed a tune he didn't recognize, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She caught his gaze and smiled. "Hungry, or just thinking too hard again?" she teased, gesturing for him to sit at the counter. Michael sat but didn't respond immediately. Finally he said, "How do you do it? Stay so patient with me." Sarah paused, turning off the burner before facing him fully. "Because I know you," she said gently. "I know what you've been through, and I know you're trying. But, Michael, you have to let me in. Fully, Otherwise, those doubts will never go away." He nodded, her words sinking in deeper than ever before. The turning point came one night during a quiet moment. Emma and Liam were asleep, and Sarah was curled up on the couch, reading. Michael sat beside her, the flickering glow of the fireplace casting shadows across the room. "Can we talk?" he asked. Sarah set down her book, her expression attentive but cautious. "Of course." Michael took a deep breath, his hands clasped tightly. "I've been carrying so much from my past. Too much, I think. And it's not fair to you. I trust you, Sarah. I do. But sometimes I feel like there's this voice in the back of my mind whispering that if it happened once, it could happen again." She reached for his hand, her touch grounding him. "I've been waiting for you to say this," she admitted. "Michael, I can't erase what Sophia did to you, but I can promise you this. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. You've given me your heart, and I'm going to protect it. But you have to believe this." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For so long, Michael had been waiting for proof that he wouldn't be hurt again, but he realized in that moment that no amount of reassurance could provide the certainty he craved. Trust wasn't something that could be given, it had to be chosen. Not long after that conversation, Michael faced a test that would solidify his resolve. Sarah was invited to a weekend conference in another city, one hosted by an old college friend of hers, Ethan. She mentioned it casually over dinner, but Michael's mind immediately went into overdrive. "Me then?" he asked, trying to sound neutral. "Yes," Sarah said, noticing his tone. "We went to school together. He's married, Michael, with 3 kids. It's just a professional event." Michael nodded, but his chest tightened. That night, as he lay in bed, the familiar doubts crept in. What if Ethan wasn't just a friend? What if the distance tempted her? The next morning, Michael made a decision. He wouldn't let his fears dictate his actions. "Have a great time," he said as Sarah packed her bag. "I trust you." She paused, looking at him with a mix of surprise and relief. "Thank you," she said softly. Throughout the weekend, Michael kept himself busy, refusing to let his imagination run wild. When Sarah returned, she brought back not just photos from the conference, but a small souvenir for him and gifts for the kids. "I missed you," she said, kissing him as she unpacked. And for the first time, Michael realized he hadn't doubted her, not once. Michael's breakthrough came during a conversation with his therapist, Dr. Hensley. "You trusted her," Dr. Hensley said, "and she didn't betray that trust. How does that feel?" "Liberating," Michael admitted. "I've spent so much time waiting for the other shoe to drop, but now I think I can breathe again." Dr. Hensley nodded. "Trust is a muscle, Michael. The more you use it, the stronger it gets, and Sarah has done nothing but prove she's worthy of it. The next step is letting yourself believe that fully." It wasn't an overnight transformation, but Michael began to notice subtle shifts in himself. He no longer felt the need to double-check Sarah's whereabouts or question her friendships. He focused instead on the life they were building together, the love they shared, and the happiness it brought to Emma and Liam. Months later, during a quiet family dinner, Michael raised a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice steady and sure. "To love, trust, and the people who make it all worth it." Sarah smiled at him, her eyes filled with pride and affection. For the first time in years, Michael felt free. Free from the shadows of his past. Free to embrace the future with open arms. Trust wasn't easy, but it was worth fighting for, and, with Sarah by his side, Michael knew he had found something unbreakable. Life for Michael and Sarah had settled into a rhythm that felt as close to perfect as he could have imagined. Their home was filled with laughter, love, and the joyful chaos of raising Emma and Liam. Michael's architectural firm was thriving, and Sarah's steady presence brought a balance to his life he hadn't realized he needed. But perfection was fragile, and storms often brewed on the horizon without warning. It started with a phone call one late autumn evening. Michael and Sarah were preparing dinner together, teasing Emma about her school crush and laughing at Liam's insistence that spaghetti should always come with meatballs. The shrill ring of Sarah's phone interrupted their laughter. She glanced at the screen, her smile fading as she read the caller ID. "Ah, Ethan," she said, her voice uncertain. Michael stiffened at the name. Though he had come to terms with his insecurities, a flicker of doubt still sparked when her old college friend's name resurfaced. Sarah met his gaze and hesitated before answering. "Hello." As she listened, her expression shifted from confusion to concern. "What? When? Are you serious?" Michael set down the cutting board, stepping closer. "What's wrong?" he mouthed. Sarah ended the call and turned to him, hurt. Face pale, "That was Ethan. His wife Melissa is filing a lawsuit against me." "What?" Michael's voice rose in disbelief. "Why would she do that?" Sarah swallowed hard. Apparently she thinks I had an affair with Ethan during the conference." Over the next few days, Sarah tried to untangle the situation. She called Ethan, demanding answers, but his explanations only deepened her frustration. "She saw us talking during the conference," Ethan admitted. "I didn't think it was a big deal, but now she's convinced something was going on." "And you didn't correct her?" Sarah's voice shook with anger. "I tried, but she won't listen," Ethan said weakly. "I'm sorry, Sarah." The lawsuit accused Sarah of alienation of affection, a legal relic in their state that allowed a spouse to sue a third party for causing the breakdown of a marriage. The accusations were baseless, but they threatened to drag Sarah's reputation through the mud. Michael was furious. "This is ridiculous," he said, pacing their living room. "You've done nothing wrong. We're not going to let this stand." Sarah, however, was less certain. "What if people believe her?" she whispered, tears in her eyes. "What if this ruins us?" Michael knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "We've faced worse than this era. We'll fight it together. You're not alone in this." Michael and Sarah hired a top-tier lawyer to handle the case. While their legal team worked tirelessly to disprove Melissa's claims, the emotional toll on Sarah was heavy. The whispers began almost immediately. Neighbors and acquaintances who once greeted her warmly now avoided her. At the grocery store, Sarah overheard two women discussing the case in hushed tones, their glances darting toward her. Michael noticed the strain wearing on her. One evening, after the kids were asleep, he found her sitting in their darkened bedroom, staring at nothing. "It feels like I'm back to square one," she said quietly, "like I'm being punished for something I didn't do." Michael sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "This isn't like before," he said firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong, and I'm not going to let this break us. You hear me?" For the first time, Sarah allowed herself to lean fully on Michael, drawing strength from his unwavering support. The turning point came during the deposition phase of the case. Melissa's lawyer presented photos of Sarah and Ethan talking at the conference, claiming them as evidence of an affair. Michael noticed something odd about the photos. "These were taken at the hotel," he said, pointing at the timestamp. "But look, Sarah's wearing her badge. The conference was in a separate building across the street. These were taken out of context." Their lawyer pressed the issue, and after some digging they uncovered the truth. Melissa had hired a private investigator to follow Sarah during the conference. The photos had been doctored to make their interactions seem more intimate than they were. Confronted with the evidence, Melissa's case collapsed. The lawsuit was dismissed, and she faced countersuits for defamation and emotional distress. With the legal battle behind them, Michael and Sarah began the slow process of rebuilding their sense of normality. The experience had tested their relationship, but it had also proven its strength. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching Emma and Liam play in the yard, Michael turned to Sarah. "You know, this whole thing reminded me of something," he said. "What's that?" she asked, leaning against him. I'm not the man I used to be," he said thoughtfully. "Before you, I would have let my insecurities get the better of me. I would have doubted you." "And now?" she asked, her voice soft. "Now I know what it feels like to truly trust someone," he said, "and I'm never letting that go." Sarah smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "I love you, Michael." "I love you too," he replied, pulling her close. Years later, Michael and Sarah stood together on the deck of their home, watching as Emma prepared for her high school graduation. Liam, now a teenager, tossed a football with friends in the yard. Their journey had been far from easy, but it had shaped them into a family stronger than Michael could have ever imagined. The shadows of the past had been replaced by a light born from trust, resilience, and love. As Michael wrapped an arm around Sarah, he whispered, "We made it." "Yes, we did," she said, her smile radiant. Together, they watched their children and their future unfold, ready to face whatever came next. Together,